Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast of Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by a man who is very disappointed that this year we will not get to talk about Urban Meyer. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It is going to be disappointing. No Urban Meyer in the NFL. That was classic entertainment. And yeah, ready to get started. Let's keep the train moving here. We're almost there, man.
Yeah, we have a comment saying tuning in for Kyle's spicy hot takes. Yeah, I think I'll have maybe a spicy hot take or two in this one, Kyle.
Will you? I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty chalky with this one right now. I mean, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll get into it.
All right. Well, potentially some potential spicy hot takes. That's what our teaser is. But yeah, interesting division. I think some people like to talk about this as one of the worst divisions in football, largely due to just the Texans and Jaguars really bringing the average down these past few years.
What do you mean? They're my two favorites right now. Maybe I will have hot takes. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, somehow the Texans are not the worst team in this division, at least in terms of these past 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's saying something. So, yeah, I mean, the bottom of this division is really bad. I mean, I do have it as the 8th best division out of 8 in football. But it is really those two teams bringing it down. The other two teams are pretty good. The other two teams I can see making the playoffs this season. I think I have one of these teams in the playoffs. I had the other one just barely missing out. But I could see both teams making it. So I think it's going to be really close. And I think those two teams at the top are going to be worth talking about.
Yeah, it's been a 2-horse race for a while, no pun intended, with the Colts horse. But I think that, yeah, that's what's fascinating about it. I mean, this is a division that had the number one team in the regular season in the AFC last year in the Titans. So, there is stuff to talk about. Let's get into it. As always, or I'll mention at the beginning of the show, if you like audio-only podcasts, anywhere you get your audio podcast, that stuff is available. Check that out. But, yeah, you want to just get into the list?
Yeah, let's jump right into it. I'll jump in right here with number 4. As we were talking about, there seems to be a pretty clear discrepancy between the top two and the bottom two. It's just kind of how you rank those two amongst each other. I got the Texans 4th here. Don't feel like this is too hot of a take. I think that this team's in year 2 of a very long rebuild. And, I mean, you could even argue they took a step back this offseason because they changed coaches again. Yeah, I mean, so when we go through this, I did, game by game, I predicted every game of the NFL season. I had the Texans as the first overall pick of this next year's NFL draft. I like the players they drafted this season. I like their draft picks. I really like the Stingley. I really like Pitre. I really like Kenyon Green. The problem is that, two guys in the secondary that might take a little bit longer to, kind of develop. And I think it's going to be, you need a lot more starters than that to be successful. So I think that there's good things in place, but obviously this still is a long work in progress.
Yeah, you're right. They're a ways away. The one thing that they did was they got value back from Deshaun Watson. I think that's the way that they've gotten better, and a year has passed. That's what's worked in the Texans' favor, is that a year passed, so they have a draft pick again, and they traded Watson, so they have more draft picks. But, and they were able to draft, guys last year. So that's because obviously 2 years ago they weren't able to. So that's the value.
Yeah, you get that value. I mean, the problem is now you have a questionable quarterback situation, and then I don't know.
How dare you, sir? Bills Mafia will be coming after you.
I can't wait. Listen, I mean, this is not going to be a pro David Mills podcast, by the way. I'm sorry. To any
David
listeners, Davis Mills.
Yeah, really not a pro David Mills podcast.
No, we're not pro anything, it seems like. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think so it's just kind of crazy how this whole offseason went down, because it seemed like that it was very clear, I think, by how everything ended up playing out, that David Culley was supposed to kind of help rebuild the image of this Texans organization. Basically, nobody wanted the job. They hire Culley, and they're hoping a year later everybody kind of, forgets about it, and then all of a sudden they can hire somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with just hiring Lovie Smith, that just shows that still nobody wants this job, right?
Probably, it's possible they like Lovie Smith. Let's start there. Lovie Smith was my 32nd ranked head coach. I think I think that they feel like with Lovie Smith, the defense should have been unbelievably bad, and instead it was just bad. And maybe they feel like that's something they like about him. I think it's possible they like him. I also think it's definitely true that they didn't exactly have their pick of the litter here.
Yeah, I mean maybe, but at the same time, I'm not buying into the hype. He
Hmm.
hasn't had success in well over a decade now at basically any level. He wasn't very good in college when he went back down to college.
Hmm.
Wasn't very good, obviously, during his Buccaneers tenure, as you can attest to.
Hmm.
So it's been a long road for Lovie Smith. Obviously, he accomplished a lot when he was with Chicago, but it's been a long time since Chicago, and I'm just not buying into the hype. That being said, he's always been kind of known as a player's guy. Maybe you just want someone who's going to kind of, get people around the team excited again, because it just seemed like that nobody was having fun last season.
Yeah, let's talk about David Mills, as I'm now going to refer to him as David Mills, who the Mills Mafia feels very strong about old Davis Mills. 31st on my quarterback rankings. So that's a tier 5 quarterback. Davis Mills had some nice games last year. There's no denying that. You look at one stat that just scares me is no quarterback had a bigger disparity from like a PFF grade to passer rating on deep passes than Mills, meaning that PFF grade, not very good on deep passes. The results ended up being very good. To me, I feel like there's a bit of a luck factor there with Mills, and I just don't know if I love his talent and his potential. Clearly belongs in the NFL, but I'm not going to be writing the Davis Mills campaign speech for him to be a Hall of Famer anytime soon. I don't think. Could be wrong. It's hard to evaluate quarterbacks, but that's kind of the way I view it.
I think that's fair, and especially as we saw the quarterbacks get drafted this offseason, if you don't love one, then just don't force yourself into a new situation that you don't want to be in. I would argue that you should take a rookie quarterback, but at the same time, like, yeah, if you didn't love the prospects this past season, it's okay to kind of punt on it and then see what happens. I think he had some high highs. That's basically what it was. He looked great in that Patriots game. I think he looked good. He looked decent in a couple other games, but he had some really bad situations. And I think it also kind of balanced out to where basically among every metric, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. He was 28th in EPA per play. He was ahead of Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson. He was 35th out of 37th in PFF quarterback rankings. So, I mean, he's basically was a bottom 5 quarterback on every metric last season, and I think that's kind of who he is.
Yeah. The plus side, though, is that Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Fields also were all like bottom 5 quarterbacks. So then that kind of makes you feel like, okay, maybe there's potential here. Also, the great overlap 618, the official sponsor of the On the Sideline podcast, of a $20 donation. Heck yeah, Jackson bringing the heat, but we do need a new updated video with the Tampa Bay Bucks injury update and next steps for offensive line. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Overlap 618. Well, at least next week we'll give our full predictions for who's going to win the Super Bowl and all that good stuff at the end of that one. So maybe be on the lookout for that. But yeah, let's move on to the rest of this offense. Don't love this. I had the halfback as a tier 5 halfback, but I also really like Dameon Pierce. And if he ends up being the starter, maybe I'll feel stronger about it. There's a lot of good halfbacks, and they have a lot of like halfbacks that you're like, oh yeah, that guy. Rex, that seemingly is their mindset, is to just always try to get halfbacks that make you say, oh yeah, that guy. Rex Burkhead, Marlon Mack there, Ngum Bawale, Royce Freeman. Halfbacks is not the end all be all by any means. And for the other weapons, wide receivers, like Brandon Cooks, I like John Mechie a lot that they drafted in the second round. He's one of the guys I'm higher on than other people are, so I'm fascinated by that. Some depth with Nico Collins, Philip Dorsett, Chris Conley, and then you also have Brevin Jordan, who we haven't seen much of at the tight end position. I have it as a tier 4 wide receiving core. I like Brandon Cooks and I like John Mechie, but there's it is not a very deep wide receiving core.
Yeah, Mechie's not playing for the future, right? Like for next few months.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do like him as a prospect. Hopefully, obviously, with that whole situation, he's able to come back healthy. That kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I like Brevin Jordan too as a tight end that had, I thought, moments as a rookie last season. So I think that there's players here that can go out and catch a ball. Like you said, Collins had a few big plays last year, and then like you said, Pierce was kind of a home run hitter for Florida too. So if he's able to translate that to the NFL level, I mean, there is some talent brewing here on offense. It's just the question of, is there enough? I don't know if there's enough just yet. I still think it's a couple years away. I guess the question I have for this group is, although it sounds like he's pretty happy there, do you begin to, if assuming things go as we expect and things go south quickly for Houston, is this do you start to look at Brandon Cooks as a trade piece halfway through the year?
It seems like he doesn't want to go. I think that from what I
Yeah.
understand, I think like he's not okay with that. So also, yeah, the John Mechie thing, I sort of forgot about that. Yeah, he was diagnosed with leukemia. So he's going to miss the entire year. So that obviously is a lot more important than just football. But yeah, hopefully that goes okay. But yeah, I think that maybe some trade pieces that would make sense might be in the offensive line more than anything. So the offensive line to go there. This is the best part about the offense, certainly. Probably the best part about this team. I would say the best part about this team is the offensive line. It's tier 3 for me because you have Laramie Tunsil, you have Tyus Howard, who is good at tackle. Don't put him in guard because he, for some reason, one of those weird things where typically guys who can't play tackle play guard. He's the opposite. He can't play guard, but he can play tackle. So keep him there. They drafted Kenyon Green, who I was not super high on. I had him as my 64th rated prospect. They drafted him 15th. So we'll see if that works out. I've been wrong before, as people on Twitter love to let me know. You have AJ Can, who, he's been a bit inconsistent and was injured last year, but he's been, like, as a whole, he's a solid guard to round that out. Justin Britt should be maybe a slightly below average starting center for them. So don't love the interior. The tackle situation is solid. Tunsil might not be what his, he might not have had the best couple of years as of late, but he's still a good player. So tier 3 offensive line for me.
Yeah, and if Green's good, this could probably get even higher. I mean, that's the one thing, like you said, it has going for them. We'll see on Green. I did like him. I thought he could have been. I thought he was a first round pick. I didn't know if I would have taken him 15, but I did have him as a first round pick towards the back half of the first round. I think he could still be. I think he's still going to be a pretty good player, and I think he fits what they want to do. Yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, this is probably the best part of the group right now. I think that they've definitely built this interior up. Hopefully, we'll see. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see if they can, if they keep Mills up, how he can do and how much he can prove that he earns this job.
Yeah. As for the defense, the coverage, maybe the guy I'm most excited to see on this team, Derek Stingley Jr., who they just drafted, who, if you're not someone who keeps up with the draft, kind of his thing is he had this 1 year in particular where he was incredible. And I still think showed flashes the most recent time we saw him, has had some injuries, which isn't great, but he's someone who has gotten Darrelle Revis comparisons at times. So that lets you know how some people feel about him. They also have Steven Nelson. And then Tavari Thomas, who was, PFF loved him as a slot corner last year. So that's a fascinating thing to keep an eye on. How is that, just who he is? That'll be very good. If Stingley can step in and be a corner 1 right away, which is a lot to ask of a rookie, but if he were to, this would actually be an actively good coverage unit. But, a lot to ask there. Jalen Petir, as you mentioned, in the second round. You also have Eric Murray and MJ Stewart in the mix. So it's a tier 4 coverage unit for me, just because you are relying a lot on a rookie corner to come in and play well. That doesn't always end up well, at least not right away. So tier 4.
Yeah, 2 rookies in the secondary, I think, is a tough recipe for success. But that being said, I do like both the players. I do think Stingley had upside of potentially the best player in this draft class. And I do think he has that. And like you said, he was an awesome prospect. He came on as a rookie for LSU and was awesome on that championship team. It'll be interesting because it seemed like a lot of people quit on that LSU team last season. It didn't seem like it was just a Derek Stingley thing. So we'll see if he's able to kind of, shake that off and, play, in the NFL is a little more motivated. I do think it's possible. Plus, he's just super talented. So I like the pick. I like taking the chance on that. And I mean, this secondary, I think there's pieces here that I'm excited about. I like Owens as a safety too. So I think there's things to like about this secondary.
Yeah, I think so as well. And again, they're planning for the future. They know they're in a rebuild, which is smart. I like the idea of building on the outside, especially like a corner position. I think that's a great way to start a rebuild with corner because they take time to develop. So draft them. So by the time that they're developed, you can then draft offensive or defensive linemen or like wide receivers, guys that come in and play well right away. For the front 7, you have, not a lot of great stuff here, if we're being honest. The edge rusher position, you have Jonathan Grenard, who, looked all right in about 400 snaps last year. So, wasn't great in 2020, but maybe, you feel that that's something you can build off of. It's kind of similar thing with Ogun Ogbonna Okunrenwu. That's a tough one to pronounce. we'll call him Double O. He was another guy. 300 snaps, was good those snaps, but is typically sort of more of a solid guy. You have Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison in the mix as well for the edge. For the interior, Lloyd Lopez, Malik Collins, who are both solid. Ross Blacklock, who, again, famously was the guy who they drafted after, with the draft pick they got from DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe would like to have DeAndre Hopkins back. Thomas Booker, a 5th round that they just drafted in the mix as well in the interior. And then for the linebackers, Christian Kirksey, Camus Grigor Hill, and Christian Harris. Not a lot of well-known names here. Christian Harris was the 3rd round draft pick this past year. I have this as the 32nd ranked run defense and 31st ranked pass rush.
I like the pass rush, I think, a little more than that. I don't know really how I would rank it though. I think it's tough to see. I guess it's tough to judge because I like Hughes, but obviously, there's just so many pass rushers, I think, in the league right now. It's like, having Hughes as your number 1 guy isn't exactly the most exciting thing, but him and Grenard should be fine.
Right. Like, just for example, the Bears at 30, 1 spot ahead, they have Robert Quinn. It's like, I'll take Robert Quinn over any of those. It's just like, they're just, every team has talented pass rushers.
Yeah, that's fair. So I like that duo. I think that they might be able to do some things, but like you said, this interior group is just bad. That's the thing is like, if these young players in the secondary aren't good right away, I don't see how this defense gets any stops.
Lovie Smith, his scheme that covered that Tampa too.
I guess, but at the same time, they're just going to get run all over too. So
yeah,
I don't really see a lot of success for this defense this season.
Yeah. Also a tier 5 kicker for what that's worth in Jaime Fairbairn. I have this as the 28th ranked offense, 28th ranked defense, 31st ranked team overall, worst in the AFC. Not expecting too much from the Texans.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit. We'll see how they continue to develop, but it seems like we're still 2 years away from being 2 years away.
Something like that. I mean, the Bengals looked like they were a complete. People were saying Joe Burrow shouldn't go to the Bengals, and then in his second year, he goes to the Super Bowl. So you can turn things around quickly if you get the right people, but you have to get the right people, and sometimes the way to do that is by having early draft picks.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen with Davis Mills. I'll be honest.
Yeah, maybe someone in the draft next year.
Yeah, we'll see on that one. Ready to move on to number 3?
Yeah, number 3, the Jacksonville Jaguars on your list. I'm assuming. I guess I can't speak ahead. Is there a chance that maybe it's the Colts or the Titans?
No, it's not going to be the Colts or Titans. So yeah, I do have the Jaguars here at number 3. I think that this is the right spot for them. I just like a little bit more on this roster than the Texans roster. I think Lawrence has had some throws that have been really awesome this preseason. I think he's getting in the right direction. I think he's got an adult in the room and Doug Peterson, which should only help. And then I just look throughout the roster and it's like, okay, is this roster good? No, but I think a lot of things should be better than what it were last year. Like, did I love the Travis Etienne pick 2 years ago? No. No, I don't. But at the same time, I think he's going to help the offense a little bit, him and Justin Robinson being able to rotate, do different things. Do I love the Christian Kirk signing? No, but I think he's going to be the best receiver on this team this season. I like this secondary. I think this secondary is growing and improving. I like the 2 rookies seem to pan out that they got last season. I think they're heading in the right direction. I like some guys they have on the defensive line. I like the linebacker they got. I think that there's pieces in the right direction here. It's feels similar to the Texans, and they're in the same division, so you can compare it. It just feels like maybe a year ahead of the Texans.
I don't know. I think I'm more bearish on where they're at. I didn't love this offseason, and I thought they got to, I think the Christian Kirk contract is going to hurt for a bit. Like, that basically means that you're not going to be able to take advantage of the Trevor Lawrence rookie deal for the entire rookie deal. So, there's some issues, or at least the Texans, you're kind of like, it's almost, the whole is a bowl more useful when it is empty type mindset. I think that there's some issues. I think the number one thing they have going for them, also I forgot to mention, Texans 2.28 wins is what I have them at. But I think the one saving grace the Texans or the Jaguars have, and this is what the entire exciting thing about the Jaguars, because they're a complete mess without this, but they could be awesome with this. It's you have Trevor Lawrence, who I currently have as a tier 4 quarterback just because of how he played last year. But if he can live up to his potential, that this entire team is relying on Trevor Lawrence succeeding.
Yeah, and you were kind of on this before before he was drafted, is that, I think you basically said, I think it's gonna take a little bit for Trevor Lawrence to be good in this league. I think
Hmm.
he went through some growing pains. I thought he had some flashes of being good. I thought he had
Hmm.
some flashes of really good throw, but I thought he struggled, like you said, to read defenses a little bit. I thought he struggled with some of that stuff. Um, we'll see if it gets better. We'll see if it's better in year two. I'm hopeful it's better than year two. And like I said, I know it's only preseason, but there have been positive signs, I think, overall in preseason. I think that he's heading in the right direction.
You know what's not heading in the right direction? The situation around him is still not great. The wide receiving core and offensive line, I just don't like. I mean, the receiving core, Christian Kirk, he should be good in a Doug Peterson offense. All of that stuff was not a great signing, though. We can all agree on that. But still, you're adding value. It's better than not having Christian Kirk. But, the remaining groups of Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, Laviska Shenault, Laquan Treadwell, number one wide receiver, and then you have Jamal Agnew, who ended up, again, they were such a mess last year. Jamal Agnew was getting like legitimate wide receiver reps because they just couldn't figure out who was completely brought on to be a special teams guy. For the tight ends, Evan Ingram, Dan Arnold, Chris Manhertz are the tight ends there. I had this as a tier 5 wide receiving room. Again, I like Christian Kirk, but he should not be the guy carrying this receiving core.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I guess the one thing is, like, you can give them credit for, it's still probably a tier 5 just because there's nothing really that stands out, is that there's a lot of options. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, I think Marvin Jones and Zay Jones are both solid NFL players. Like, I don't think that they're like at the point they had guys playing last season I didn't think should be on NFL rosters, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at least when I look at their top four guys all deserve to be on an NFL roster. And even their tight ends, I look at their top 3 tight ends and say all 3 of those guys should be on NFL rosters. I look at a guy like Travis Etienne and say, as a pass catching running back too, he should be a pretty good pass catching option at running back. So I think, you can look at that and say, by default, that's better than what they had last year because they were playing guys who shouldn't be in the NFL.
I guess so. I guess that, yeah. Rave reviews that everyone on this roster should be in the NFL. The offensive line's fascinating, right? I don't love this tackle tandem of Cam Robinson and Jawan Taylor. I like Brandon Sheriff a lot. He's an addition. They paid a lot for him. He would be very good. But with Ben Bartich, who is a 2020 fourth rounder, who has played like a fourth rounder. And then you have Tyler Shatley, who is a below average center, I would say. This is a tier 5 offensive line for me as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, right now it's basically Robinson, Scherf, and 3 guys who might not be starters on any other team in the league, right? I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how the rookie does at center too. So that's another one. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it's basically 2 guys who I feel at least are. Scherf's good. Robinson, I think, is a respectable option, but you definitely don't want him to be one of your best offensive linemen.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating. The halfback's good. James Robinson. The only guy who doesn't like him is the guy who was head coach last year, and then you have Travis Etienne, who the head coach last year loved so much he drafted him in the first round. So a great 1-2 combo there. I mean, we can't say great with Etienne yet. We haven't seen him play in the NFL, but it's a tier 2 halfback room for me.
Yeah, and there's a lot to like about ETN, the prospect. I think there's a lot of upside there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hope he's healthy because I think he can be a really exciting player. Robinson, I think, is also terrific. He's proven himself in the NFL 2 years now. Best part of the offense, which, not always great when the running backs are the best part of the offense.
Yeah. Doug Peterson is in the mix, and I think that this Doug Peterson scheme should work well for Trevor Lawrence of kind of this, RPO, keeping things simple mindset, which I think is exactly what Lawrence needs right now. So that stuff I like should help everything. That doesn't factor into the offensive win total, though. The offense is tied for 31st. So you're not last. You're tied for 31st. So there you go.
Yeah, got time for 31st. There's it's something going for you. I mean, we've seen Peterson have success with younger quarterbacks. I mean, it didn't end well with Carson Wentz, but there was still, there was still 3 or 4 years with Carson Wentz where things were looking really promising. I could see, things start to turn around a little bit. I could see Lawrence develop really well in this offense. And like you said, I just think that there's at least better players around him, even if we don't love the moves they made to get those better players, you got to say at least it's better.
Sure. I guess, yeah, again, you managed to surpass the Urban Meyer era Jaguars. Great work.
Yeah, I mean that's building. That's building in the right direction.
I guess so. I suppose they are technically getting better. I guess that is the goal. Um, I'm very fascinated in this coverage unit. It's a shame that CJ Henderson that didn't work out because this could have been a really good coverage unit if it did. But there's still stuff to like here. So they have Shaquille Griffin. They added Darius Williams. You still have Tyson Campbell. Although I believe did Campbell get injured? I think he got banged up. I think he's okay if I remember correctly. And then you have for the safeties Andre Cisco, who they drafted in the third round of 2021. I remember being very high on him at the time. Rayshawn Jenkins is another safety. Don't love their safeties necessarily, but I like their corners enough. It's a tier 3 coverage unit for me because it definitely has potential to be even better than tier 3, but also has potential to be a lot worse than tier 3.
I agree. I mean, I liked Cisco. I thought Cisco had a very good rookie season. Campbell really started to come on in the second half of the season, and then Darius Williams too. I mean, I think that's 3 really good corners. I think if you go through that group, I think that's 3 nice corners. I think that's a nice safety. The second safety spot we'll see, but at the same time, I think it's solid. I really like this coverage unit, and if Devin Lloyd's as good as I think he can be, I think this could be a awesome group in coverage this season.
Yeah, I agree. Big fan of Devin Lloyd. I had Devin Lloyd as, I believe, a top 10 prospect. I think he's fantastic. I see Bobby Wagner type upside with this guy. You also have Foye Oluokun, who they like. So there you go. Chad Muma, they also drafted in the third round. So putting a lot of emphasis in getting the linebacker situation under control. It should work out. For the interior defensive line, you have Malcolm Brown, who is typically solid, did not grade well last year. Fule Fatuski and Roy Robinson Harris. Neither one are going to be guys that you buy a jersey of probably, but are, okay, fine depth players. Edge rush, Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker, and you still have Caleb Von Chase on there. 3 first rounders, maybe 2 bust, maybe 1 bust, depending on what side of the Trayvon Walker situation you are. So I have this as it's a tier 3 run defense for me. I actually have it as a tier 5 pass rush, even though I really like Josh Allen. I just don't like the rest of this stuff. I don't think Trayvon Walker is going to come in right away and be super effective. I think it's going to take him some time. Although I thought he's looked solid in preseason, so that's nice. But I think that with Josh Allen, kind of having to probably do a lot here, that's my concern. And I think that it's going to be, again, a lot of good pass rushes there. Also tier 5 kickers. So 21st ranked defense, which is a little bit better than the offense. Still the 27th ranked team overall in my book with 4.46 wins, 15th in the AFC. The 2 worst teams in the AFC I have in this division.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I've been trying to play devil's glass half full, I guess, with the Jaguars. And I mean, I have the Jaguars at 4 wins this year, so it's not like I'm saying this team's gonna go crazy or anything. But once again, it's so Josh Allen's there. I kind of like Arden Key too. You got Trayvon Walker. We'll see what happens. I think, and like you said, Lloyd obviously in the middle. There's pieces to like here, and obviously the hope is that Walker's good. Because if you miss on him and Chase on, then you're setting yourself back a little bit more. But hopefully one of those guys pans out. And, it could be a pretty good front 7 in that regard.
Yeah, you could talk yourself into it. Best case scenario for this team is certainly a lot better than the best case scenario for the Texans.
I think so, because you at least got prospects to get excited about. And even, we were both, neither one of us was the biggest Trayvon Walker fan. But, if he's at least solid in year 1 or has something that looks like he can build on to being a good NFL player, Devin Lloyd looks good, and the secondary continues to improve with a bunch of young players, then all of a sudden you can get pretty excited about this defense, and hopefully Lawrence is better too.
Yeah, some people brought up in the comments Malcolm Brown was cut, so got it. It's always difficult. I make all this stuff, 2 months ago because I have to get the rankings in order, and then, a lot of it changes. So appreciate letting me, if I say something wrong, appreciate you guys letting me know in the chat. Also, someone says, nobody saw Cincy last year either. This is, I feel like this is going to be something that gets brought up a lot now, is who could be the next Bengals. But there is always that potential of if the quarterback all of a sudden, has a MVP candidate type season from, that's going to add a lot of wins to this win total. I actually don't know if that's going to, for the Bengals, that happening and Jamar Chase being a number one, being like one of the best receivers in football right away, that was enough to propel the Bengals to from kind of a team like the Jaguars to elite. I think the Trevor Lawrence one, that's possible. I just don't know what else could really jump up that could turn this team into great, but that could at least turn them into like solid.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot to say that like if this works out, they'll be pretty good at certain position groups. If you look at quarterback, if you look at secondary, look at the front seven, but at the same time, it's right now still with the Jaguars, it's a lot of ifs because we haven't seen any of the guys actually be good besides Josh Allen.
So to the comment, will the Jags win the division? Probably not.
No, I'm not saying that.
No, but one team has to win this division. Here's where we get into the really interesting side of things. I think that I understand the logic behind picking both of these teams. I feel pretty strongly that one of these teams should be the favorite, but I'm interested in knowing, where do you feel here? Colts or Texans? Who is finishing second in this division?
I've been going back and forth on this one. I still don't feel very confident either way. I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans to finish second. I have these two teams a game apart. I have one team at 10-7 and one at 11-6. With the Titans, I have some questions. I don't think the offense is going to be as good this next season. And I think the offense isn't going to be as good because I think it's a huge drop-off. Even if you like Treylon Burks and think he could have a good rookie year, which is possible, I think the drop-off between A.J. Brown to him, Robert Woods or Treylon Burks is going to be significant. I think that's a huge loss to this offense. We'll see if Derrick Henry, can be healthy for a full season again. And, I think it's kind of, you're playing Russian roulette when it comes to running backs, especially as they get older. I think that's something to be a little bit concerned about. I think you're looking at no matter who they start at right tackle, it's going to be a rookie. I think that's a little concerning. We'll see how either of those guys pan out. We'll see if Taylor Lewan can stay healthy, if he can come back 100%. I think if you look at one of those things, I think if you look at all those things, I think I have enough questions about the offense to bump them down to number 2. Even though there are some really good things about this team, I think this defense should be very good this next season. But yeah, I got the Titans number 2 right now.
Yeah, I do as well. We have mixed reviews in the chat. Someone saying Kyle's on my level. Someone else saying Kyle's got his clown shoes on, LOL. So, mixed reviews. Yeah, I don't love this roster. I think that this is a team that overperformed last year, and I think that they're probably going to fall back down to earth a little bit. Plus, I think they got worse this offseason. So I think those two things they're an issue. And this is kind of, when I say I might have a hot take, I think this is probably my hot take. I am definitely lower on the Titans than I think some other people are. But let's just get into it. Mike Vrabel, who I believe won Coach of the Year last year, he's my 9th rated coach. That very good, one of the best sort of rah-rah motivator type coaches in the league, and has hired good personnel consistently, which, that's your job at the end of the day if you're a head coach. Ryan Tannehill is a tier 3 quarterback, which I had him at tier 2 for a while, and I don't necessarily feel like he's gotten much worse. I just feel like other quarterbacks, kind of younger quarterbacks, have come into the league and surpassed him more than anything. So, I think the question with Tannehill is always sort of, he does well when he's in a good situation and can still elevate from that good situation. But if the situation isn't as good this year, will he still be able to elevate that way?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Tannehill, I think he was finished, I was just looking at it, 12th in EPA last year for quarterback. So I think tier 3 is probably fair. He's kind of in that tier. I think there's still a lot to like about him. It is going to be interesting to see without his number 1 option in pass catcher. And then, like you said, Vrabel, I thought was, not only did he win Coach of the Year, I thought he was very well deserving based on the job he did. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good quarterback coach tandem, and it's that they're at least there's at least I think a floor with this team because of that duo.
Yeah, I think that there's there's definitely stuff to like about this team. This is not a bad team by any means. I think that to me, the biggest question mark is going to be the wide receiving room, which I have as tier 5. I'm not a Treylon Burks guy. I never was. I thought that the A.J. Brown comparisons were unfair. I think A.J. Brown does a lot of stuff that we just haven't even seen Treylon Burks attempt to do. And I think that's fair to be concerned. Granted, a lot of people like him more than me, so that might just be a me thing. and maybe I'm too low on the Titans for that very reason because I'm not a Traylon Burks guy. That's just my own evaluation coming into play. AJ Brown missed 4 games last year, but AJ Brown meant a lot to that team. And AJ Brown had a ton going for that team. And I think losing him is going to be significant. I do. Robert Woods, they added, he should be effective. He could be a nice sleeper. But then even this, I've never loved their depth. And Colin Westbrook is solid. He's a fine 3. I don't hate that as a 3. But then you also drafted, Kyle Phillips in the 5th round. You have Des Fitzpatrick, who was a 4th rounder last year. Austin Hooper should be a solid tight end. You have Jeff Swaim as the other tight end. But, my real concern is the loss of AJ Brown. How will they fix that?
Yeah, and I just think he was really important to this team. I mean, it's not a hot take. I think he is that good. I mean, the good thing is that they did draft depth. I think I wasn't high on Burks either as far as a first round pick, but at the same time, would I be shocked if Treylon Burks is good in the NFL? No, not necessarily. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Phillips is good in the NFL. But I don't think either of them, especially in year 1, are going to have anything close to the same impact as AJ Brown. I think it's going to be at least a couple of years before anything like that happens. And even then, it might not happen at all. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if either of those guys turn out better than what I thought. But at the same time, I don't have them on that level. And then Woods is nice, but I really like the idea of Woods as that number 2 receiver. Now he's taking on that number 1 role, and I'm not sure I love that as much.
Yeah. The offensive line has good and bad with it. You have Taylor Lewan, who hasn't been as great as the last 2 years, but still is, big name tackle. Well, has had some very good stuff. I'd probably bet on him being good than bad, but, hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad either these past 2 years, but, still. You have Dylan Raduns, who was not great in 100 snaps last year, but he was a 2nd rounder who kind of one of those, went to a small school, dominated there. I'm not willing to give up on him yet. He could be a good tackle potentially for them. You also have Aaron Brewer and Nate Davis for the guards. Nate Davis is good. Brewer plays better than an undrafted free agent. Still isn't a star, though. And then Ben Jones, who I like that's for the interior. So it's a tier 3 offensive line for me.
Yeah, there's some things to like here. I just hope, if I would have liked it if, Lewan's 100%, but I just don't know if I don't think he's the same guy since that injury in 2020. You think he stepped back a little bit. I like, like you said, Radun struggled in year 1, but they drafted also the Ohio State kid, Petit Frere. There we go. I kind of liked him. I thought he was underrated out of the draft. So maybe they, maybe he steps in and starts for this team. It'll be interesting to see how that right tackle spot looks by week 1, but they have some options there. I think it's a solid group, but there's nothing really to write home about.
The one thing this team has going for them, and sometimes a really good running offense can surpass my rankings. It's always, difficult to predict exactly how valuable it is because so much also comes into how it's used. But Derrick Henry, I have as a tier 1 running back by himself. Dontrell Hilliard and Hassan Haskins, who they just drafted in the 4th round. Those guys are there, but this is Derrick Henry's job, who, the Titans' rushing offense still looks solid without him, but obviously he matters a lot, not just for what he actually does, but also just for the threat of Derrick Henry back there. The question you have to wonder, though, is he's not getting any younger and he's coming off an injury. And I know we kind of view Derrick Henry as this, guy who's sort of in a league by himself and he's just a freak who he breaks the rules. And maybe that's true. Sometimes you got to do that. Tom Brady is one of those guys. But there's also a chance that he is a human. And, at the age when running backs tend to start to struggle coming off an injury, which is when running backs start to struggle, could we see Derrick Henry not be prime Derrick Henry? It is a possibility, but I would still bet on it working. So I have it as tier 1.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just taken a lot of touches over the last few years. It's been a lot of stuff. He still, even with the injury last season, had 219 carries. So he had 2 back-to-back seasons before that with over 300 carries. So I just think, there's a chance he's still awesome. And, I'm not going to bet against Derrick Henry. But there is still a chance that this stuff starts to take its toll on him, even despite his, sheer size and athleticism, which isn't, amazing given, his position. And, he separates himself among his peers because of his size and athleticism. I'm just a little bit worried, I think, going forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's the offensive player of the year again. So we'll see.
Yeah. I guess here's my thing with Derrick Henry. If you were to and maybe this is just, me talking to myself a little bit because I still had him as tier 1, but just to play the devil's advocate, if you were to say, hey, there's this running back who's been the best running back in football for a couple of years and even had some historic seasons, but now he's, coming off of an injury and didn't look great after the injury. Should we build an offense around him? What are you saying?
No.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fair to say no at this point until we see it again.
But that doesn't mean that it won't work either. So that's just where things get interesting. So I have it as 24th offense. Defense definitely gets better, although I think there's a bit of an over. There's one thing that we're just Titans fans always get mad at me for, but we'll talk about that in a second. First, let's talk about the coverage. Coverage, very good. For the safeties, it doesn't get too much better than Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker, with also a 6th-rounder, Theo Jackson, in the mix. And then for the corners, you have Christian Fulton, Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden. You drafted Roger McCreary. I have this as a tier 2 coverage unit, and last year it was really well coached on top of
that. Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Best safety duo in the league. They have that going for them. The corners are solid, so I think that there's a lot to like here. And yeah, I mean, I think going forward, this should be really good. We'll see how McCreary looks too.
Yeah. So the run defense, the front 7, that's just where the question marks for me, or that's just where Titans fans, if you don't want to hear criticism about your team, plug your ears, because we're just going to disagree on this, and that's fine. But the run defense is, listen, interior, Jeffrey Simmons, awesome. But you have, Tier Tart, DeMarcus Walker, Danico Autry. Oh, very good. I like the interior. The linebackers, Zach Cunningham is, love him or hate him. Zach Cunningham is, he kind of is what he is, and David Long as well. I have no issue with any of that stuff. The question marks I just have is I don't love their edge rushers. I know that Titans fans will sit here and say, what, you don't like Harold Landry? Not really. A lot of his advanced statistics are not very good. Seems like a lot of his wins do come on plays lasting a while and getting cleanup pressures and cleanup sacks. Bud Dupree did not grade well last year. So I have it as a tier 4 pass rush. I have it as a tier 4 run defense. The run defense ends up being tier 4. It could have easily been tier 3. It was one spot away. But that's just where, again, I know Titans fans aren't going to be thrilled with me about complaining about their pass rush. They think their pass rush is great. I don't. We just disagree.
The good news is it has a good coverage unit. I think that helps it out. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the pass rush is awesome. Jeffrey Simmons is awesome, so they do have that. But yeah, I mean, I just think that, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you there. I don't think a lot of it's there's no elite guy in this group that's going to get after the quarterback a whole lot. Besides, Simmons is obviously a Pro Bowl player at that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Simmons is great. I just don't love the edge rush. Like that, what Simmons does on the inside is fantastic, and that sets stuff up. I just would like to see a better edge rusher there. But again, even if this stuff was tier 1 in both categories, I wouldn't have this team at ahead of the Colts. And I believe they wouldn't even be in the playoffs because I have them at 8.19 wins. That's 20th in the NFL, 12th in the AFC. That's tier 4 kicker. So I think the concerns are. I think it's, again, fine. People like their pass rush. We could disagree on that. I think it's reasonable to be very concerned about this wide receiving core, though.
I think it's reasonable to be more than concerned. I just think we've never seen Westbrook ever take on that number 2 role. We've never seen Robert Woods really take on that number 1 role before. We've never seen 2 rookies. I think we've all liked the talent of Austin Hooper. We haven't really seen it percolate into being a top 10 tight end in football very often. So I think you look at this group and say, okay, there's players that I kind of like a little bit, but at the same time, none of these guys have really proven themselves at the level they're going to be asked to be at.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting comment, sort of responding to what I said. You can't just look at the pass rush on paper for your evaluation. They're elevated heavily by their scheme. Doesn't matter how to get wins. To some degree, that is true. I actually agree with, certain teams are going to be benefited more by scheme. There's not really a way to, in a preview, factor that in. So all I'm factoring in is the talent, not necessarily the way that they fit into a scheme. So that part is very much true. I would still say it does matter how to get wins, just because there is an inherent element to flukiness when it comes to like sacks and pressures, because game in and game out that does happen. And guys who maybe get a lot of wins later on into a play one season, that will go, they won't get those wins the next season typically. So but I do think that is correct. To all the Titans fans coming at me, that the scheme stuff is very fair. And if you believe that they should get more wins because of that, then, then you can make your list about that.
Yeah. So I think, I was looking at it. When I did my predictions, I had them at 10-7. I had them just above. I just think there's a lot of bad teams at the bottom of the AFC, which I think helps.
Hmm.
I had them just outside the playoffs. I had them one game out, but like I said, I think it was a one game difference between them and the Colts for the division. I could see either of these teams winning. I think that I have a little more comfort in what the Colts can do top to bottom than I do the Titans right now. There's just some questions for me.
Yeah, let's go to the Colts because again, it's funny to be on the opposite side of the Titans stuff because I've been pretty pro Titans. I feel like since this podcast has started, it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, you've typically been the Colts defender and I've typically been the Titans defender, but I like this Colts team a lot. I think there's a lot of good stuff with this Colts team.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to get excited about for the Colts. I have them at number one because I just quite simply think that they have good pieces all around the football. And you know what? I actually think that the stuff with Carson Wentz was a little overblown last season. I didn't think he was as bad as people said. That being
Hmm.
said, obviously, when some of the games they lost, you could directly relate to Carson Wentz's poor performance. I think that had a lot to do with it. I think him and Matt Ryan were pretty statistically even last season, even though I thought Matt Ryan had a lot more difficult of a situation, especially once Calvin Ridley, stepped away from the team for, an extended period of time. And
Hmm.
so now Matt Ryan steps into this situation, and I think it's going to be a pretty good situation for him. Uh, don't love the wide receivers, never love the Colts wide receivers.
Hmm.
That being said, though, Michael Pittman has been pretty good, I think. I think he's been a pretty good option
Hmm.
for them as a number one guy. I like Moali Cox as a tight end. I think they got two really good running backs. One is a pass catching option, too. He's going to go behind, I think, a top 10 offensive line. And then this defense, I think, should be very good. I know they're losing Matt Eberflus, their defensive coordinator, but there's still a lot of pieces, I think, that are star level players on this defense.
Yeah, I think so as well. Let's just jump into it with the two guys at the top of the list. Let's start with the quarterback and head coach. You have Matt Ryan and Frank Reich. Matt Ryan is, I think, the Frank Reich 10th on my head coaching list. Ryan was a tier 3 quarterback. I really did feel like his situation made him look worse last year. Now I thought that he also doesn't look like the guy he once was. He's typically been like that. It's almost been always basically, if you're better than Matt Ryan, you're a tier 1 guy. If you're worse than Matt Ryan, you're a tier 2 guy. He's kind of been right in that mode for most of his career. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but there still is a lot to like about him, and I have no doubt that he will do a good job at running this offense.
Yeah, I think he should. I think he should be able to manage it just fine, even if that's even if that is what he is for the rest of his career. I think he's just going to be a little bit smarter than what they had under center last season in Carson Wentz. And I still think he can make all the throws he needs to, and I don't think they're going to ask him to do a whole lot, especially when you look at this running game and offensive line around him.
Yeah. Someone says Jags might win the division if Colts choke. Listen, if the Jaguars played the Colts in Jacksonville 17 times, they'd go undefeated.
Yeah, Jaguars would be the best team in football.
Yeah, that's what they need. Wide receiving core. One thing that I think why I like this receiving core more than maybe some other people might. And again, this is where draft evaluations kind of come into play when I'm doing this. I was really high on Alec Pierce. I really liked Alec Pierce out of the draft. I think I was much higher on Alec Pierce than Traylon Burks, despite the fact that Burks was drafted significantly before Pierce was. Pittman, you're right. Pittman's sort of very underrated wide receiver. Every wide receiver is underrated, but he's one of the actual underrated wide receivers. You could maybe like a third option with the receiving core with Paris Campbell and Ashton Dolan are very much depth guys. But Mo Alley Cox serves that role at the tight end position. It's a tier 4 wide receiving core. There's still, neither one of these guys are stars. I'm relying on a rookie. You never know how that's going to go. But there's at least stuff to like. I don't think it's a trash receiving core the way it has been in the past couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Pierce is a really nice option. I liked him too in the draft, but when I get away from the draft, I'm kind of always just like, we'll see as a rookie. We'll see how it works out. I'm not, expecting a whole lot from him in year one, even if I like the talent. But yeah, I mean, I think Pittman's been one of those guys. He was 20th in Pro Football Focus's wide receiver grades. I think he's kind of in that territory. I don't think he's a true elite guy, but he's pretty darn close.
Yeah, I mean, he made some really impressive catches last year.
Yeah.
Which worked. He played well with, played well with Wentz. I think he could play well with Matt Ryan as well. The offensive line should be a big upgrade from what Ryan had to deal with, especially in certain games last year. The tackles you have. It's interesting because you have Matt Pryor, who is a solid tackle, I would say. You have Braden Smith, who is better than solid. He's a good tackle. You also drafted Bernard Rainman in the third round, who many thought could go in the first round, including myself. So maybe he'll be a guard because they could potentially use a guard. Looks like Danny Pintner might be the guy there. You also have Quentin Nelson as the other guard. So, you're good there. Ryan Kelly, who had a down year last year, but is usually a top 10 center. So tier 2 offensive line for me.
Yeah, I think it's really good. And like you said, if Kelly bounces, I mean, it seemed like it just seemed like kind of overall not as great of a year from the Colts offensive line. I do think it bounces back because, like you said, there's good pieces here. Quentin Nelson.
And part of that is probably Carson Wentz,
holding the ball for 10 seconds at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't help an offensive line succeed. I mean, Quentin Nelson's awesome. And, I kind of like the rest of these guys, like you said.
Yeah. Halfback, you got Jonathan Taylor. So, two really good running backs in this division. Good running back division, the AFC South. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor. Naheem Hines certainly complements Taylor well. You also have Philip Lindsay in the mix. It's a, tier 1 running back room because you have Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
He's MVP candidate.
He's probably going to be in the conversation. I think he's basically fantasy football's number 1 player, so take with that what you will.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get a lot of touches, he's going to get a lot of opportunities, and he's also a really talented running back. So we'll see again how he does this season, how he holds up, but a lot of talent there.
Man, last year in my fantasy football league, this is what I hate about fantasy football. I was so on Jonathan Taylor. I said, Jonathan Taylor, going to make sure I drafted him. I made sure I drafted him, and then I got 4 other injuries, and just I think at one point I was had the third most points, but was 0-6. Fantasy football is just not my thing.
Yeah, I had a rough year too last year. Nobody wants to hear about my team. It's okay.
I think people are interested. Let's move on to the 17th ranked offense. The coverage unit I really like. You added Stephon Gilmore, who he didn't play again. He hasn't gotten able to just play a full season last year, but he was good when we saw him. You also have Isaiah Rodgers and Kenny Moore in the mix as well. Not to mention Brandon Facyson, who he's one of those guys who I've always liked when I've seen him play. I know his numbers aren't good. I can't really argue with that, but I feel like there's talent there. He came over from the Raiders. You also have Rodney Thomas, who was a 7th rounder, so a little bit of depth there, but I like the top 3 guys with Gilmore, Rodgers, and Moore. Like their safeties enough with Julian Blackmon, Rodney McLeod, and Nick Cross, the 3rd rounder that they just got. And then of course it helps that Darius Leonard can cover with the best of them. You also have Bobby Okereke in the mix. This is a tier 1 coverage unit for me. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I like the group, and it starts with the linebackers, like you said with Leonard. Kenny Moore, best slot corner in football. Shout out to Valdosta State. You just looked at the group. I love Stephon Gilmore, obviously have for quite some time as a Patriots fan. I think he's going to be good in this defense. Julian Blackmon's a guy, people are really excited about. I think he's talented. Nick Cross, super young, another guy who I think is really talented too. We'll see how he develops, obviously coming in as a rookie. I think that you just looked at this group and you like a lot of it. And if Faison's better, then all of a sudden this could be a really, really good coverage unit.
Yeah. The front 7 also plenty to like. So this one's similar. Kind of there's similar vibes here with the Titans a little bit because you have a great pass rushing interior defensive lineman. This time it's DeForest Buckner. I also have Grover Stewart in the mix on the interior. I mentioned the linebackers. For the edge rushers, they went out and traded for Unique Ngakoue, who was the 104th rated edge rusher according to PFF last year, but hopefully he can improve upon that. And I expect he will certainly at least improve upon that. Kwity Paye is also in the mix, though, who had a very good rookie season. Wouldn't be shocked to see him step it up. So, their edge rushers better than the Titans' edge rushers. And you also have Tyquan Lewis in the mix as well. So he's solid, former 2nd rounder back in 2018. So I have it as a tier 2 run defense and a tier 4 pass rush, just because again, what are we going to see from Unique Ngakoue? I like Kwity Paye. I like the way that they stop the run, especially with again Darius Leonard in the mix. He's going to help out both in the run defense and in the coverage unit. So this is actually the 3rd ranked defense for me. I have this team tier 4 kicker, so 12.02 wins, 5th best in football, 2nd best in the AFC. I am very high on the Colts this year, and I'm usually low on the Colts. Okay,
so I had them at 11-6. I mean, it is 1 win difference, so it's not too much, but yeah, I mean that's a very high ranking. I agree with everything you said about this front 7. We'll see if Ngakoue can be better. I really like Kwity Paye. I like a lot of what I saw. DeForest Buckner, I think I've been on this podcast saying how much I like DeForest Buckner. Pretty much anytime he's on the field, the defense seems really good, even if it's a really bad defense everywhere else. So yeah, I mean, I like this group overall. I don't really, I mean, I don't have a ton of issues. I don't know. Third best defense seems optimistic to me.
Well, I mean, I care very heavily about coverage, and I trust this team to cover well, and I think they have depth on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. I mean, this secondary should be very good. I guess I would have to go through all of it, all the defenses, but I mean, I guess they could be in that situation. And like you said, if they are able to cover at this level, if Gilmore is that good still, I think this could be, like you said, this could be one of the best coverage units in the league.
Yeah, and again, you throw that in there. I like their. I mean, for me, it goes coverage, run defense, and then pass rush matters some. And for the, I also really have their run defense high. I've been calling him Darius Leonard. I believe he wants to be called Shaquille Leonard now. I haven't updated my notes. So Shaquille Leonard, which is weird because I feel like that totally works. Like Shaq Leonard, that just feels like, oh yeah, sure, Shaq Leonard. But yeah, Shaq Leonard, I think is someone who, I think that he means a ton to this football team.
Oh, I didn't even actually know that. So there we go. Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic player. He's one of the best linebackers of football. He's just so rangy, I think, in the middle of that defense. So yeah, I mean, all of this makes sense on paper. It just feels like so. I mean, I've been high on the Colts before in the past. Like you said, I'm still high on this team. I'm picking it to win the division. I'm picking it to win 11 games and make the postseason again. I guess the question is, play a little devil's advocate. What would go wrong for this team? What could go wrong?
Matt Ryan falls off. That's always, quarterback is always like, how could this team be great? How could this team be horrible? It's always like the quarterback comes into play right away. But assuming Matt Ryan is the solid Matt Ryan that we expect, I think maybe Alec Pierce doesn't develop the way we're hoping he can right away. I think that could hurt them. But again, they've shown that, Frank Reich can scheme stuff up without the best wide receivers. I guess maybe Stephon Gilmore showing his age would probably be the next option, but I still think they would be okay. I think this is one of the more, I think this, maybe Shaq Leonard gets hurt, but I feel like this team can pretty much withstand an injury from maybe anywhere, including quarterback. I think they'd be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I guess, Sam Ehlinger has looked good in the preseason. So,
yeah.
It would be,
got Nick Foles in the mix,
Oh yeah, I forgot he's there too. So I mean, you got some options there. We'll see how this team pans out this season. There's a lot to like. I don't know about the upside of this team. I do see it as definitely good enough to win this division, potentially win a playoff game or two. And with that physical offensive style, I think that they can win in January, definitely.
Yeah, I guess for me, and also I know that Leonard is a little bit banged up now. I'm assuming he's going to be back before too long, but I believe I guess my thing is, my viewpoint of the AFC is that there's a lot of very good teams. I don't know how many star teams there are. And I think that's maybe where the Colts could find a way to get to the Super Bowl, similar to how like Cincinnati did last year, where they were very good, but also there wasn't like a Kansas City team of 2 years ago that was just like, dominant.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think, we went through it last week. I think there's questions about all the teams in the AFC West. I do like the Bengals. I do like the Bills that we're going to talk about next week. But overall, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of solid teams in the AFC. I think that's fair.
Yeah, we have a comment. Agreements, disagreements aside, this is much more entertaining than actually doing something productive at work. At the end of the day, that's our goal, right? That's what we're trying to do here. Get people to not be productive at work and listen to us instead.
That's going to be our new catchphrase on the Sideline Podcast. More entertaining than working.
Yeah, I'll take that.
I guess.
I mean, I guess anything's really more entertaining than working.
Well, we're one of those things, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is very fun. Kyle, we only have one of these types of podcast left. We will be doing your division, the AFC East, talking about your Patriots, why they will win the Super Bowl, I'm sure, is what you'll be talking about. And then I believe at the end of that podcast that we typically do it is then we're going to give, do you want to just do the whole thing? Who's going to win MVP? Who's going to win, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all that fun stuff. And also, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, so like you said, we're going to break down the AFC East, and it's MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year. Then we'll go through our playoff predictions and Super Bowl winners. We're going to do that all next week. Make sure to tune in. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger on Twitter. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That's at On the Sideline JK.
Yes, of course, as I mentioned earlier, anywhere you get your podcast, On the Sideline Podcast, search that. It should be available. Kyle, any final thoughts before we head out?
15 days, 2 weeks, basically, till football
Crazy.
season. We're all excited. As Jackson said, make sure to, if you want to listen to audio only, go to the audio only versions. Also, if you do listen to the audio only podcast, make sure to review us on Apple. Give us 5 stars because we are better than working.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know put in the comments that we're better than working. If you feel like we are, maybe you like it. I don't know. I like my job. But maybe you feel like it's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we're worse than working, we're just going to say you have a great job.
Yeah, exactly. Again, thank you to everybody. We do appreciate it. And until next time, see you later, alligator.
Peace.